Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's webcast. My name is Zina M. Pagan, ARF's Marketing Manager and your moderator for today. Before we begin learning about the next phase of ARF's How Advertising Works research, please be aware of our house rules. We are aiming to provide the best webcast experience possible. You can help us execute this by keeping yourself muted and keeping your computer web camera turned off. The audio will be streamed. This means that you will be able to hear us through your computer speakers. However, if you prefer to use a teleconference option, please use the information provided on your screen. Additionally, I will post the information on the chat box throughout the webcast. Should you have any questions during the session, please send these to me using the same chat box. ARF does not own the rights to the presentation. However, the session will be recorded. If you would like to view the recorded event, the file will be made available within 2 weeks from today. We are extending the conversation on social media. If you'd like to join us, please use #ARFWebcast. If you're interested in hosting a webcast of your own, please contact me at zina@thearf.org. Our next webcast will be held on June 19th, where we will feature our yearly ARF at Cannes program. For this webcast, we partner with Oracle Data Cloud and IRI to talk about digital engagement and what's it mean. Also, if you're in the Chicago area on July 13th, Leo Burnett will be hosting the ARF for our regional event, where we will learn how to invest in, create for, and measure the fastest growing and most impactful platforms of our time. Thank you to our sponsors, CBS Vision, ESPN, LiveRamp, Pinterest, Simulmedia, and Turner for their support. And last but not least, join us for our audience measurement conference next week. We've added Sunday to our programming to allow for more networking opportunities. If you're interested in any of these events or other ARF programs, please feel free to contact me at zina@thearf.org. Alternatively, you can also find more information on our website. And without further delay, I present to you today's webcast, Lift Creative ROI via Deep Psychographic Learning with Bill Harvey, Chairman and Founder of Research Measurement Technologies, also known as RMT, and Larry
Zina? Hello?
Hi, Bill?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm sorry. I think I got cut off. I apologize.
You were introducing Larry Allen.
Sorry, I'll start that over. So Bill Harvey, Chairman and Founder of Research Measurement Technologies, and Larry Allen, Vice President of Ad Innovation and Programmatic Solutions at Turner. Bill and Larry, the mic is yours.
Great, thank you. All right.
Larry,
Bill, you have control.
Are you on the slide? I'm not seeing the screen update.
Sometimes it takes a second for the, there it is.
Okay, great, awesome. Perfect. So thank you, everybody. Larry Allen, Turner Ignite. Working here with Bill Harvey. We're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of advanced TV and some of the work that we're doing with Bill. So we thought we'd do a little bit of an intro on kind of how we got here and some of the things that we're doing in and around advanced TV and how it's ultimately leading to ROI and how we're leveraging ROI in order to plan better media. So basically, one of the things that we've been working on for the last year and a half here at Turner is how we reimagine advertising. And that really comes in two flavors. The first is how we use data analytics and technology applied to media, both linear as well as cross-platform, in order to deliver better results for clients. And that's really kind of the meat of where we're headed with this presentation, but then also how we enhance the consumer experience, both from an advertising perspective, but with programming in general. Given the competition in the market, the fragmentation of platforms, we really want to understand the mindset of the consumer and basically ensure that when we're delivering advertising to them in any platform, that it's needed, wanted, and desired. And so there's a lot of work going on in that area. And so one of the things that we talk to clients about a lot is basically putting their objectives at the center and putting the client at the center of these conversations and enabling them to tell their brand story to their specific audience using a lot of data and analytics to build better segmentation beyond age, sex, demo, and then ultimately, focus on delivering a key result for that client. And we're doing that today really by leveraging a wide array of first and third-party data. And so we're bringing in either syndicated data that a lot of people are familiar with from a research and planning perspective, but actually using it now to activate campaigns. There's also a number of survey fusion work that we can do with clients or custom syndicated work where we can bring in that data, pair it with TV viewership data, and then again use that to build a smarter, more optimized schedule. And then last, and certainly not least, enabling clients that have rich first-party CRM data to bring that data in a privacy-safe way into the TV linear landscape and use that to build optimized schedules. One of the big challenges that we've had ourselves as well as other networks is really enabling clients to do that in a very consistent manner. We had a scenario where, Turner would be selling a audience segment and consulting on how to design and formulate that segment with an agency or a client, and then our other networks would also be having those same conversations, and we'd end up designing the segments on different data sets, and therefore the client would have a really hard time gauging results and understanding kind of how each of the networks actually performed. And so one of the things that we've done and we announced very recently was OpenAP, which is an industry consortium founded by Fox, Viacom, and Turner to really solve two big problems. The first was this idea of designing consistent segments that could be built and then shared across the networks that are participating in the consortium, and that enables scale, obviously, across a much broader set of inventory. And then the third component is really independent posting. So having a verified third party validate the results. Up until OpenAP, each of the networks that were running audience campaigns for clients would effectively be providing reporting on their own. We'd take the calculations from Nielsen, we'd look at our ads run logs, we'd basically put them in a PowerPoint and share them with the client. And as clients are spending more and more dollars against advanced audiences, they wanted to have a third party validating that reporting. So that's a really huge initiative and something that we're very excited about, and the industry has been very excited about. And that really is the first step in helping us kind of move up this evolution of ad experiences, as we like to think of it. So, historically, we all know about, age, sex demos. That was broad reach across television. That's existed for 40 years. The last 3 years have really brought us audience-based targeting, where we're building plans and looking for more specific audiences within programming. But now what we're thinking about, again, putting the consumer into the equation, is thinking about moments, the environment, the context, the platform, their location, their own need state, where they are in a decision journey. So all of those moments need to be considered as we're building schedules and putting advertising out in front of a target audience, because there are certain times of the day where it's not going to resonate, and they're basically, it's going to deliver a negative brand impact and not push for the results that clients are wanting. And then ultimately where we're headed is being able to effectively predict outcomes and key in on the very specific KPIs of a client and basically determine what those are, and not only measure them after the fact, but use that historical measurement to actually predict those outcomes and ultimately change the currency. So we've done a bunch of work around a primary research around understanding the need states of the consumer. There's a quick view of kind of the various objectives that the clients would have, whether it's branding, consideration, or conversion, how we've mapped that to consumer purchase needs, It was a large study that we fielded in order to build this mapping, and then ultimately mapping it into the consumer's content needs. And there's really interesting output from this, which helps us identify certain programming and times of day where the consumer is effectively being primed for a certain type of message from a client. And this is really helping us be much more flexible with how we're building and delivering schedules. We're eliminating a bunch of waste that otherwise, is not helpful for a client and is also annoying to a consumer potentially. And it also allows us to more quickly automate how we're building these schedules, because we're able to use this data that has come out of this research along with other data that we've got in order to refine and optimize schedules. And so, really that is kind of a quick recap of kind of a lot of the work that we've been doing, and we've been working with Bill on trying to understand how do we get to ultimately the outcome, that upper ladder rung, in order to deliver the best results for clients and make sure that we're not inundating customers or consumers rather with too many messages at the wrong time, creating negative effects for the advertisers.
Larry, thank you. I'm going to talk about what our plans are going forward, but first I'd like to comment that what we just saw from Larry is in itself a real turning point in the history of this business. Buyers and sellers always were in adversarial positions in kind of a win-lose format. And here we see sellers who are trying to create wins for the buyer side. I think Turner, Fox, Viacom, and others who join OpenAP deserve a lot of thanks from the industry, and I think it's a great step. And we are enjoying, as we always do, our relationship with Turner, and we'll be relating where that's heading in this next section. From the standpoint of what we've achieved so far as an industry in the last few years, we've come a great long way. We are already dealing with ROI. Back in 2005, when you said you could measure the ROI of advertising on any kind of a granular level, nobody believed it. And now everybody knows that it's true. So that's a giant leap in itself. Going forward, what's left to do? So this slide is my personal view of what's left to do that's highest in priority. You heard Larry talking about need states of the audience and how do you match that in time and with content so that the context supports the ad to deliver the highest ROI. How do you actually do that? We're optimizing as an industry up till recently against really CPM, more recently, finally, against reach, and finally transcending sex age to more advanced targets. But it's not just about target reach. If the moment, the meaning of the moment, the experience, if all of that has an effect on ROI, and obviously it does, and we'll see some evidence of that, all of that has to be optimized for simultaneously. So we really have to optimize against ROI. That means calibrating all of the proxy and interim measures against ROI. For example, we know that back in the TRA day, when we lifted the target index, purchaser targets, let's say heavy swing purchasers of Swiffers, when we raised that index from 0 to 110 across a campaign, we knew that that was going to cause a 7% on average increase in ROI. The relationship of that proxy to ROI was the 7 to 10 relationship. So we have to do that for all the targets we use, for all the methods we use, context matching. Whatever it is we do can be calibrated to ROI to create optimization. Now, 65 to 80% of the ROI of an ad is the creative itself. That's been replicated over and over again by a lot of different folks. and even taking the more conservative 65%, it's obviously the most important part of the advertising process, the center of the plate, but we haven't been including it in optimization because we didn't know how. Now we do know how, and that's part of what we'll see in this presentation. And then psychographics, beyond and within the general sphere of advanced targets. You know, there's purchaser targets, there's proxy purchaser targets based on fusion, there's targets based on various behaviors you can measure passively on the internet. All of these things can be calibrated to their ROI value. Right now, Simmons, for example, since they measure 8,000 different brands, and they measure a lot of different psychographics, they are calibrating how well each psychographic and, in fact, each demographic predicts each brand's usage, which is calibrating to ROI. So that's what we're going to be talking about as we go through the next 10 slides or so. So in March, Horst Stipp and Jesper Snyder, then of the ARF, from the main stage at the annual ARF conference, presented this slide as the one ROI slide and a slide about context, the effective context on priming higher engagement and attention, and now even ROI. So what this shows is that when, and I'll explain what driver tags are in the next few slides, but driver tags for the purpose of this slide are words that can be attached as descriptors to TV programs. Those words can also be attached to ads. So therefore, you can take an ad that, let's say, has 10 driver tags, and you can say, well, if I were to put it in this program, how many of those 10 driver tags does this program have? Well, in work sponsored by Turner, measured by Nielsen Catalina, and which was then endorsed by ARF as a finding of how advertising works, ARF's program, what we did was we found that if more than 60%, or at least 60% of the driver tags in the ad are mirrored in the program environment, you get, for brand A, a 37% increase in ROI, according to Nielsen Catalina, against the average of that whole campaign running at the same time. And for brand B, it was 35%. Very high degree of agreement between those two findings, of course. So driver tags came out of a notion that we needed a universal, holistic taxonomy of psychological words so that we can apply them to content as meta tags, but also so that we could apply them to people as psychographics. And so we started with every word in the English language. That's over 1 million words in the Oxford Unabridged Dictionary. Paid people to go through and copy out words that met certain rules we had given them, essentially finding words that could describe people's personalities, values, motivations, moods, emotions. We got over 13,000 words. We reduced them by synonyms to 10,000. We put those out in 10 different national probability samples so that each adult 18 plus in one of those samples only had to rate himself or herself as to how well each of 1,000 words described them. And we then factor analyzed that result, and we found that there were 1,562 out of the 1 million words in the English language, that most of the variance in the psychological dimensions came from those 1,562 words. We then used them in a personalized recommender within what was then the largest cable operator in 1997, TCI, now part of Comcast. We found that people, first of all, over 90% of them were satisfied with the recommendations, which we were happy about. But then we found that almost 18% of them converted to loyal viewership of the recommended show. We were knocked out by that result. We then asked for a statistical analysis of how you would weight each of the 1,562 meta tags in order to best predict those conversions to loyal viewership. That's when we found out that all the power was in only 265 of those 1,562 words, and we called those driver tags. They are now exclusively licensed into the my new company, RMT, and we continue to use, we've also done a lot of validation. Back in 1997, the world was so different, we wondered whether they'd still work. We found that they explained 76% of the variance in Nielsen ratings, which Dave Poltrak said was very, very, very good, probably the best that he's seen. It's been the best that I've seen. And the way we do this is we have coders who independently code the program according to these 265 words, or the ad. And we have 3 people do it independently, and where 2 out of 3 of them agree, or 3 out of 3 agree, that's taken to be applicable in attribution. This actually was the report format used in that Turner study that you just saw the average 36% ROI left in. So you can see here that we ranked 800 shows, all of the shows that were used by these 2 brands in the 3rd quarter of 2016. We ranked all the shows by the degree of resonance with the ad that was placed in that show. So Whose Line Is It Anyway on CW was the best match with this particular commercial. And it was, in fact, used in the actual schedule. The next 9 or 10, however, the best matches that could have been used weren't used. This is fairly typical. Obviously, schedules aren't being built this way nowadays, which is really what this presentation is all about, is taking the steps to begin to actually build this prospectively into an optimized plan rather than measuring it afterwards after not having built it in, so to get much higher results. Going back to that 37% and 35% and comparing it against other things, Nielsen Catalina in the same Turner study also measured LEAP scores and Nielsen's own Quad Gold scores. Now, as Horst Stipp has pointed out, there's 2 types of context effects. One is independent of the ad content. It's like a generalized attention benefit that a show might have. Both LEAP and Quad are trying to get that other type of effect. And, you know, you can use both the attentional and the congruency context methods together, and at which point they become additive, so it's not either or. LEAP, which asks a single question, you know, what is your favorite show on television, the one you're most emotionally attached to? According to Nielsen Catalina, that earns a 10% increase in ROI, at least for these 2 brands. And again, very consistent, like the driver tags. The Quad scores, however, in one case was associated with a drop in ROI of 45%. Now, you may not know, Quad is related to the loyalty of viewership. The higher the proportion of the viewers who watch 4 out of 4 and who watch every minute of the program, the higher the Quad score. And so the other brand performed as the hypothesis would have expected, a 24% increase in ROI. Not quite as good as driver tags, but if it was consistent, it would be a great thing to combine with driver tags. Of course, Quad is based on attentional, where the ad doesn't matter, and driver tags is based on the matching of the ad and the program. 2 different strategies that can be combined. Nielsen also at the March conference reported that sitcoms, they did a massive meta-analysis to see how program types, genres, related to ROI for CPG. And the biggest score they got, pretty much the only double-digit score they got across that broad average approach, was for sitcoms, which lift, on average, the ROI of CPG ads by 14%. So you can see that there are different context effects, and you can actually use a combination of them to maximize ROI. Now, those aren't the only things that we know about that have been calibrated to ROI. From some TRA and Nielsen-Catalina other learnings, and supported by some simulmedia learnings, here are some other things. Purchaser targeting. So TRA found that on average, if you picked a show to include in your media selection process based not only on sex age, but on the degree to which that show over-indexed on reaching heavy swing purchasers, that is, category-heavy purchasers who have used your brand before, therefore where the light tap of advertising can actually get somebody to come back to your brand. It's much harder to get someone who's never used your brand to start trying a mature brand. So we found a 28% average increase. I'll talk more about that on the next slide. A big variation around that 28%. Context we've just seen based on this first research averages so far, a 36% increase based on, these were 15 different ads for 2 brands. We'll be adding to these and changing them, updating them as we collect more cases. Creative weeding, I think that the first people I saw using that effectively was Mars, Mars Inc., Snickers, etc. They used single source going back to even before TRA existed in Europe. They used it, and what it simply means is you get a single source measure. It could be against a small panel, or it could be against the big data, like TRA does it, TiVo now. But if you get even though you've pre-tested the commercial, you've pre-tested it typically not against sales effects, because you'd have to be in market to do that. So it's typically pre-tested against things like persuasion. A third of those don't have a sales effect anyway, even though they've been pre-tested against communications measures. So as soon as you can get a sales measure, take those commercials off that aren't performing. I call it creative weeding. That effect all by itself is an increase in 52% on the ROI of a campaign. So those first 3 effects, and the one I'm about to mention, you can combine all of these, and you can see how you could more than double the ROI. In fact, Mars in Europe reports that they went from a 70-cent per dollar average ROI to over $2 over a period of a few years by combining the purchaser targeting and creative weeding. Now this last one, fast reach. Being able to develop high reach is obviously important. Being able to develop it more quickly, why would that be important? It turns out that the faster you build reach, the better you do on recency. And that's because advertising decays in a 48-hour period. Chuck Young is now doing some research which may extend that period. It may not be such a sharp curve, but all marketing mix modelers, Nielsen-Catalina, a lot of people depend on that Ebbinghaus decay curve, which says it's all forgotten, almost all forgotten, and not all, but almost all forgotten in 48 hours, which means that you have to hit somebody within 48 hours of a shopping trip. You do that better the faster you build reach. I won't take more time to prove that to you here, but if you want more proof, send me an email. I'll send you the studies. Now, this was work we did with Nielsen-Catalina and CBS. There were 2 cases. One showed that fast reach achieved a 28% ROI increase, the other one a 95%. They were both different kinds of food products. Fast reach, incidentally, can be achieved 2 ways. One way, using high-rated programs like broadcast prime programs and some cable prime programs and some sports programs. But there's another way of building fast reach, and that's when you optimize reach using big data. When you optimize reach using big data, the duplications between the programs, which never reach statistical significance when you're doing it on a panel, even with 50,000 people, there's just, a 0.2 rating against the 0.2 rating, 2 different shows, how well or how little they duplicate or how much they duplicate. It's not going to give you a stable finding for buying the future based on historical data. But with set-top box data or any other data at scale, you can use a reach optimizer and you can build fast reach. Again, if you want more information, I will send it to you. I said a moment ago that I was going to go back into that average 28% of purchaser target. So we've seen it go as high as over 200%. One of the main variables in how high it goes or how high it doesn't go is how you use rotations. So everybody tends to use some rotations. Some people use a lot of rotations, even run of network. Their theory is they're going to be buying for a lot of brands in the upfront. They're essentially going to be buying everything on television, and they can clean up the optimization when they do the brand allocation. It doesn't actually work. You really have to make the upfront corporate stable, rich in matches to your brands, or you're not going to find it when you go back after it. So Client X only achieved a 4% lift. That 48% includes Client X, one of the biggest users of TRA, and that's because they tend to use almost exclusively rotations, including run a network, or at least they did back then. Hopefully not anymore. You can see that Mars got 25% and 35% for purchaser lift. Kraft Oscar Mayer got 25% in one case and 81% in another case. So it's really important to be able to go beyond random rotation. And yet, that does add to the workload, and it may incur some premiums. So what's the solution? Turner and OpenAP are using whitelisted rotations, where within a rotation, you're picking programs that over-index for your brand. And any that don't over-index for your brand won't be in the rotation. That goes a long way towards correcting the dilutive effect of rotation. And the fact that it's now going to be available for any users of OpenAP is, again, a wonderful step forward for the industry. Now back to that thing called need state that Larry was talking about, people's psychographics and how driver tags fit in. So let's take a long step back and picture the advertising process. There are 4 things that are involved in any advertising campaign. So starting in the lower left here, one of them is the ad or the ads. You know, it's not an advertising campaign unless there's some ads. They could be non-ad ads, you know, native sponsorship, some other form of messaging, but let's just call them ads for now, the stimulus. Then there's the media environment in which you place the stimulus, the context. Then there's the individual that you're exposing. And then there's roll-ups of those individuals into types of individuals by characteristics that are really important, like do they use the category? Because if they don't use the category, they might be a lookalike in all other respects, but it's very hard to get a non-user of a category with an ad campaign to become a user of the category, unless it's a brand new category. So ideally what you want to do, if you're trying to get psychology into advertising, which is all about psychology, it's communication, you'd have to have the same psychographic designators to place on each of these 4 things. You'd have to be able to put psychographics on a brand, the same psychographics on a person, the same psychographics on an ad, and the same psychographics on a media environment. It's never been possible before, but driver tags make it possible for the first time. A common language across these 4 different dimensions of advertising that have to work together. And then how does this all fit into the workflow then? You know, how do we make this practical? So this is a Simmons concept. I'll be talking more about it at the ARF next week. Step 1 is kind of a segmentation, you know, looking at the segmentation you've done before in the light of new psychographic and driver tag data for new insights, and then maybe creating adapting your old segmentation into an improved segmentation, enlightened by the new information from the psychographics and the driver tags. Now, an interesting fact here is that you can put driver tags on people and on households without asking them any questions if you know they're viewing. Because if you know the programs they view, and if you know the driver tags on the programs they view, then you know the driver tags on those people. That's in fact how our 1997 program recommender worked. It looked at the genes of the programs people watched, according to their set-top box data, and looked for those genes in other programs they didn't watch. So anyone who's got set-top box data or ACR data, smart TV data, any kind of data on digital exposure to video, server-side data, if you know what people view, you can put these 265 psychographics on those people without having to ask them any questions. It's a big step. Adds to the value of having that kind of big data. So the next thing is to develop the target, step 2, box 2 here. And the target should be the most sales responsive target, but it shouldn't be such a narrow sliver. You're not affecting your whole business. So you have to put together a target that has the scale and that has the ROI. So it's not a simple pick one. It's a combination of things that usually involve purchase data and psychographic data. Then you have to, step 3, develop a creative brief. We, like the CMO of Volkswagen in a recent excellent blog post, believes that even before the agency thinks about the creative, the brand itself should do the first creative brief and give it to the agency. They should do the deep thinking, start there, then let the agency do further deep thinking and come back with executions. But however you do it, use the psychographic data that you've used for targeting and segmentation in the creating of the brief for the creatives. Finally, select media based not only on purchaser targeting, fast reach, but also on resonance, on congruence, the context effects. We already know that step 4 is going to add, on average, 28% to the ROI for the targeting. And with the new whitelisted rotations being done by OpenAP, that 28% is going to go up, because that was with the anchor around its neck of a lot of random rotations. So that'll go to at least 40, and 36% for context resonance. And then creative weeding adds another 52%. The ROI value of the first 3 boxes is unknown because they've never been done before. They've never been calibrated to ROI. But we do know that 65 to 80% of the ultimate ROI comes from those stages of creating the creative. So we do expect that that's going to have massive impact. Here's an example. What this shows here is that if you want to sell Chevy Geo, then the psychographics on the left, shown in blue, are calibrated to add to brand usage by those percentages. So you can get over a 30% increase in the likelihood, that is the ROI, by using those claims in your ad, either explicitly or tacitly by the imagery. On the other hand, if you use the things in red, it's going to lower the likelihood of getting a sale of Chevy Geo, although some of those red things increase the sale of other cars. So for those of you who don't know, probably you all do know, that how advertising works, HAW is now a permanent program of ARF, where ARF is doing breakthrough research every year, working with advertiser and other partners, advertiser agency and media and research company partners. One thing about these studies is it's done in conjunction with ARF, so the whole industry helps create these studies. The whole industry gets to see top-line findings that the people who actually sponsor the study see all the findings that are relevant to their brand. And it's all done at a substantially lower price than doing it outside of ARF HAW. So it's got everything good about it. And frankly, what we're trying to do on this call is to persuade some of you listening in to, if you're an advertiser or a brand or an agency or a media company, to work along with Turner and RMT and ARF in doing some studies later this year that will feed into the March presentations of HAW findings at the ARF next annual meeting, specifically measuring these things we've been talking about, actually carrying them out. And the way we're proposing to do that is through something similar to, but bigger than what I was able to do at TRA, with ComScore providing digital ad exposure data, Spectrum now with Time Warner Cable and Bright House added to Charter, now 15 million households. The hard media cost data from SMI, Simmons Holistic Psychographics, driver tags from RMT, putting it all together, enabling you to take the same money that you spent in October and in November, spend that same money but re-optimized. It doesn't have to be November, it doesn't have to be October, it doesn't have to be a 1-month period of optimization. Logically, all of the things you do are going to have no risk of downside, only probability of upside. And so simply changing to the new schedule and then running it, seeing what the results are, is probably the best way to go. But these are all customized studies under a general, consistent umbrella. Turner plays a very special role in this, in that not only does OpenAP make it possible to do all of these things within their optimizer, which is already a predictive optimizer, not a historical data optimizer, but it's already predicting forward, which makes it sophisticated, best-of-breed kind of optimizer. Turner has pledged to help move this project forward by any means, whatever it takes. They deserve a great thank you from the rest of us. None of this would be possible without the ARF. Brand sponsors will control what data can be and can't be shared with the industry so that you know you're going to be getting vast value out of this, that you're not diluting by sharing it with competition, and yet there'll be enough value to the overall industry that it's right and proper from an ARF standpoint. And we're just asking you to raise your hands, get in touch with us, Turner, ARF, whoever. Give us the inputs, you know, say, we're interested in what you said, X, but not Y, or we just want to do this, or we want to do all of it. We like your general plan. Give us an idea of what that's going to cost, and then we will go from there to try to make it work for everybody. I think that was the end of the presentation. Thank you again, Larry, for the great job, and Gina for the great introduction.
Bill, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, ready for questions?
Both Larry and I are ready.
All right. So, everybody, if you have any questions, please send those to me using the chat box, and I will read through those for both Bill and Larry. First question, Bill and Larry. Were the test ads in the ARF Turner Nielsen Catalina RMT study all in the first pod position or in random pod positions? If the latter, the congruence effect is really strong to have the program context affect the reception of an ad that is not first in pod. Absolutely right. I wonder if Horst asked that. Horst made that point very strongly a few times, and it's true.
None of there was no pod position control. These were completely random, and I've been saying for years that it would be good to be able to pay for first position, but this very strong effect of 36%, 35 and 37 for the two brands, averaging 36, is across all pod positions, which really did blow me away. I was hoping it would be higher than 10%, and so it is amazingly strong. Apparently, congruence has more of an effect than the attentional variable, but yet to be conclusively proven.
Next question. Are the driver tags all emotional?
No, that's glad somebody asked that question. A lot of people suppose that they're all emotional because they're not, explicitly rational or some reason. I don't know why, but there's a lot more to human beings than, Jung said there was perception, there was intuition, there was intellect, and there was feelings or emotions. There were four different categories of inner experience. And actually, there are 5 different categories of driver tags. Emotions and moods is one category. Human values is another. People descriptors, program descriptors, and situations. And, things like subconscious states figure into it, brain chemistry, which senses people prefer to use to make up their minds, whether they have to see something, whether they react better to hearing it or seeing it. All of that variability went in at the top of the funnel. And all of those categories came through at the bottom of the funnel. But not every word that describes an emotion made it through the empirical calibration process, based on the predicting conversions and predicting Nielsen. It's a subset of emotional words and a subset of human values and so on that actually made the grade. Looking at the list of those that made it and didn't make it, I couldn't have guessed which ones were going to make it.
Next question. Will there be any updates on this work and study?
Constantly, yeah. I think you'll see an update of a lot of this in the Simmons presentation at the ARF next week. You'll hear about some of it in the ComScore presentation. You'll hear a little bit about it in the SMI presentation. I'll be around, of course, and we can talk a lot Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And the work is going to continue. And in Meyer's blogs, I'll be, and my other Bill Harvey Consulting blog, I'll be keeping people up to date as fast as I can.
I think you've addressed this one, but just to make sure if there was any other presentation you wanted to add, the next question is, will we see any of this research presented at audience measurement? But I think you have addressed that. Okay.
Yeah, you may not see the exact same slides. I think you'll see more information than you've seen here. I don't think there'll be much duplication.
Next question. Who should I contact if I'm interested in participating in this research?
Well, Bill at Bill Harvey Consulting, or Larry Allen at Turner.com, or Zena at thearf.org.
Next question. It's directed to Larry. Are you going to publish this research at ARF?
We're doing all the researches in combination with Bill, so we wouldn't be doing something separate.
Next question. Do you foresee ROI becoming the market currency instead of Nielsen ratings? What would be the challenges?
So we're basically pushing, and this is one of the big reasons why OpenAP exists and why we launched it as an industry consortium. We believe that there's going to be a number of currencies. It may be ROI, but there may be other key performance indicators that a client has that are more important than sales lift, as an example. And so, we believe that you should be able to define a target based on whatever advanced data set you want to use, combine that with any TV viewing data that's available that you believe works for you. And again, that's really client dependent. Different categories have different requirements, and therefore different viewing data sources make more or less sense. But, we certainly envision a world where outcomes and ROI will be a currency. I don't think it will be the only currency, and we don't think it will replace Nielsen. We think Nielsen will have a place at the table, helping us define and leverage advanced data sets that they have. But there's going to be other data that gets appended to it from an attribution standpoint to help us, build smarter schedules. And when we get, as we move further into cross-platform and addressable TV, I think that changes as well, how we look at currency and what makes sense to be transacted on.
Next question. Will driver tags be offered in open AP as segments?
It's an interesting question, right? I don't know. We haven't really talked about it as segments per se. I guess that's possible. Certainly in version 1 of OpenAP, we're focused on the data sets that are pre-matched with Nielsen and ComScore, as well as first-party data or Fuse survey data. So theoretically, yes, as part of a custom segmentation process, it could happen, right, Bill?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got some, set-top box data access. We've got access to digital data. We should be able to provide driver tags as targets in both those domains.
Bill and Larry, these are all the questions that I have for today's webcast. Do you want to add any closing thoughts before we disconnect?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time and hope this was helpful for folks, and definitely reach out to either Bill or myself if you have any additional questions.
Yeah, and thank you for all the great questions and for making the time.
I'd like to thank Bill and Larry for taking the time to present their work to our webcast crowd, and thank you to everybody that was able to join us. I hope you join me at our next webcast on Monday, June 19th. Have a great day, and see you all at Audience Measurement. Thank you.